Good morning, everybody. Please take your seats. I'm thrilled to see 70 people at 9 o'clock in the morning. I thought that I'll be only myself with my wife. And it's wonderful to see you. Not enough students, but I'm sure that they will come in the next half an hour and will be full during the day. I'm happy that we start in a high tone. Last week we celebrated the 70th anniversary of the establishment of the State of Israel. And we were thinking of doing that with a real parade of achievements of Israel in these 17 years. And indeed there are very many, more than 70. If you look at the entire Zionist concept or idea to bring as many Jews as possible to Israel, it's a great success story. When my grandparents came to Israel, that was in 1865, they came to East Jerusalem and they lived in the Muslim quarter in East Jerusalem. There were less than 40,000 Jews in Palestine then. When the state was established, the number of Jews grew 20 times more, about 800,000. And today, 10 times more. We are almost about 8 million people. So just to look at the figures, it's a huge change, dramatic change. And indeed, it continues. The national growth in Israel is one of the highest in the Western world. In fact, it's the only state among the Western states that there is a positive natural growth. In United States, Japan, Sweden, it's zero. In Russia, Eastern Europe, it's negative. And in Israel, it continues to grow. It's more than 2%. The average Israeli family today has 3.2 children. Longevity is higher than in many other places. Men get to 78 years old, women 82 years old. In the United States, by the way, men 75, women 81. So if you want to add a few years to yourself, just go to Israel. In other fields which are closer to us, academic field, we still have very many things to be proud of. Number of people with a third degree, namely that have an academic degree, we are third in the world. Number of Nobel Prizes is very high. Since 1966, 11 Israelis got the Nobel Prize, which make Israel first in the world per capita. There are other things as well that were very high. Everybody of you, you know about the startup nation, and we can go and explain and describe very many achievements in this particular field. Israel really became a world giant, if you want, in technology, science, and I could give you many other cases. Just two. Good morning, Rabbi. Just two. When I was born, and until less than 10 years ago, we always knew that Israel lacks water and energy. If anybody would have told us 30, 40, 20 years ago that that will change, we would laugh at him. I remember summers where we were not allowed to water our gardens, and years that we were not allowed to wash our cars because there was such a shortage of water. Israel today is exporting water and exporting energy, natural gas. The GDP in Israel is Israel is the 18th level in the world with 35 or more than $35,000 per capita. The unemployment is the lowest among the OECD. Moving to culture, again, Israel has the world record in the number of books that are published per capita, more than many other states that you will be surprised to hear. And we have some other things which might interest you. That is, for example, that the production of milk by the Israeli cow is the first one in the world, by far. Why do I tell you this story? Because I have a special sentiment to that. My parents that came to Jerusalem had a dairy. And until then, the late 19th century, 1885 or 87, they used to have in Jerusalem only Arab cows, you know, these thin red color cows. And my family brought the first cow from Holland, the black and white cow. So therefore, I'm watching what happens to these cows in Israel, and I'm happy to see that we are first in the world. And indeed, in many places in the United States, in the last several weeks, people do celebrate Israel's achievements. And we thought to do the same here. But later on, I realized that we will not be able to compete with others. And because of the academic approach that we have, which is more critical, we thought that we should take a more introspective approach to the issue and not discuss the achievements, you can find that anywhere, but choose a particular topic that is a problematic one, that is a challenge. And we do have challenges, in spite of the huge achievements. We do have challenges, at least three. Not, the first one, of course, is the continuation of the conflict and the occupation, which should end somewhere, sometime. But we decided to choose a topic that we can discuss and is not discussed in other places, and that is the relations between American Jews and Israel. The deteriorating relations between American Jews and Israel, that's the topic. So we have invited people who represent different schools. One group are academics who wrote on that field, did research in this field. Another one is people, public figures who are presenting different opinions, Israelis and Americans. And I think that the two panels that we are going to have and the two keynote speakers will be able to introduce to us the entire picture and ask the question, is there a growing division between Israelis and American Jews? If so, why? And if so, what can be done about it? Before we start, I just want to thank from the bottom of my heart the faculty and staff at the Gildenhorn Institute for Israel Studies, Paul Shem, Shai Chazkani, Avis Kohenman, Jacqueline Hopkins, Greg Schofer, and Rabbi Ari Israel from Hillel, who helped us organizing that. I want to thank very much Joel and Anma Gildenhorn, who are here. Without them, we would have not been surviving. Without them, we couldn't have done the wonderful job that we have been doing in the last several years. And I have to, unfortunately, to tell you that President Law will not be here this morning. He wrote to me last night saying that he doesn't feel well and regrets being unable to attend, but he sends his congratulations to the Gildenhorn Institute, to Israel on its 70th anniversary, and to the participants in this important conference. The president of the university, since he went to Israel 5 years ago or so, became a real advocate of Israel. He supports Jewish studies, Israel studies. He speaks in places. He's really a figure to be emulated by many other universities and institutions. And because of him, the Israel program in our university is the largest in the United States, with more than 500 students, with 15 courses on Israel. Sometimes I ask myself, how much can we teach about Israel? But there's a demand for that, with students with the BA, MA, PhD. We published the journal, Israel Studies Review, etc., etc. I won't talk more about that. So instead of introducing him, I have to introduce our first speaker, Attorney Talia Sasson, the president of the New Israel Fund. One of the reasons we chose her, besides her personality, is the fact that she's heading an Israeli-American organization. So she, I thought, will have a very interesting approach or angle to look at the issue of that we are talking today, because she knows the relations between Jews in Israel, Jews and Arabs in Israel, Jews in the United States, and she can give us both analysis of the institution, the organization, and the wider one. Talia Sasson is the president of the NIF and chair of its board. She serves on many councils and numerous peace and human rights organizations. And in 2009, she ran for the Knesset as a representative of Meretz. Unfortunately, Meretz failed. Not her, not she, but Meretz, and therefore she took a better position and is heading one of the most important Israeli NGOs. From 2004 to 2010, she served as a special legal advisor for the government, and at the request of former Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, she authored the famous Sasson report on illegal outposts and law enforcement on Israelis in the West Bank. In her career as a public servant, she worked in the State Attorney Office and chaired the Civil Department of the Office of the District Attorney of Jerusalem. In this role, she represented the government of Israel before the Supreme Court for 13 years in civil, criminal, constitutional, and administrative cases, and was also involved in various security and military issues. Dawn taught the course on defending Israel's democracy through law at Tel Aviv University Law Faculty, and she is the author of At the Edge of the Abyss is the Victory of the Settlement, the End of Israeli Democracy, published in 2005. So I'm very happy and pleased to invite Attorney Talia Sasson to the podium. We'll have a short introduction, and then we will have a discussion later. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. First of all, thank you for Yoram Perry that invited me here to come to talk to you, and thank you who came this so early in the morning to listen to me. Yoram spoke very highly about Israel as a beautiful place, what I believing in, but he invited me here to speak about our problems. So excuse me for that, I'll be focused in our problems. The topic of my so-called speech discussion with you is there a division between Jewry of America and Israelis? I think that, first of all, to look at the 70 years of the State of Israel, I think that we Israelis considered the Jewry of America as the most warmest Jewry supportive of the State of Israel. I think this is everybody knows that. This is common knowledge. I think that the Jewry of America supported Israel until today. I'm speaking in the past, but it's until today. From every kind of aspect, from a security, from economically, from diplomacy point of view, strategically, you name it. Wherever you look, I think that development in Israel of technology and science is because one of the reasons is the United States. And the place where Israel is today, I think that the Jewry of America has a very, very strong role to bring Israel to the place where it is. Something else that I would like to say that for many years, Israel was not a controversial issue in America. Republicans and Democrats, they both supported it in the House, and you know it better than myself. And Israel was not a controversial issue. But in the last years, I think things have been changed. And we should be looking at that very carefully and think together what should be done. It seems to me that controversy is prominent between Jews of America and Israelis, mainly by the right-wing people in Israel and the progressive Jewry of America. This is the place, the point where the conflict is the biggest. There we could see that. You know that the right-wing people of Israel, they have a long list of allegations that I just could remind them. Don't misunderstand me, I don't believe in it, but I just would tell you what they say about some or all of you. They would say that the Americans forgot, the Jewish Americans forgot that they are Jewish, that they become assimilated, that in a few years they would vanish. Nobody would know that they are Jewish. Some other allegation is from the Orthodox, mainly from the right, that reform movement is not Judaism. You know that. On the other hand, progressive Jews have a huge disagreement, if I would say that, or disagreement, that's criticism, against Israeli government's policy when we are talking about the occupation in the West Bank, or when we are talking about the relationship between Jews and Arab citizens of the State of Israel. The continuation of the settlements in the West Bank is based on the current situation where there is no peace, there is terror activities, and the whole situation could continue forever and ever. And this is something that they want to see that. They want to build settlement there. This is their vision. Why, don't ask me now, but this is their vision. So the current situation is helping them. And this is something that progressive Jews of America criticize very much. There is an allegation that although you have your opinion, you are not allowed to speak up because you are not allowed to criticize Israel. You're not allowed to criticize Israel publicly. You don't pay the death toll that we Israelis pay, and therefore you don't have a say. On the last years, I think we could hear some other messages, stronger, that we on the left, I define myself as a person that on the left in Israel, it won't help me, everybody would say that, even if I would have said something else. I think that the right-wing people in Israel succeeded in creating an atmosphere that there is an identity between being a patriot loyal to the State of Israel and being patriot and not to criticize the government of Israel. So if you're a patriot of Israel, then you can't, even if you're an Israeli, you can't criticize the government of Israel. We are the left in Israel, we suffer from that very much, but you, as the Jewry of America, you suffer from that too. In the Netanyahu term, even when President Obama was in office, I think that his visit in the House, in the Congress, when he came above the head of your president without his consent and spoke about the Iran deal in Congress, I think that the point that he put you in was extremely difficult because you had to decide on what side are you? Are you with your president or with the Israeli Prime Minister? And this is not a recommended place to put the Jewry of America, in my opinion. In Trump era, I believe that it's different, and I would have say more dangerous. Because as long as the disagreement, criticism against Trump policy, Trump figure, Trump personality is growing and growing, Netanyahu looks as if he identifies himself with Trump. And this is the picture that you see here in America, and Israel, we see that in Israel as if Trump is America, and America loves Israel so much. And as long as there are reservations, disagreement, criticism against Netanyahu, it's in Israel. And here, it affects the attitude of yours towards Israel and the Israelis towards you. So the questions, now I finished with the allegations, the questions that I would like to put to you here is what the progressive Americans should do. Is the connection to the state of Israel is important to you? This is a question that you need to give an answer to yourself. When you disagree, when you oppose, when you criticize the policy of the government of Israel, what can you do? Do you have a say? Can you say something against it? Express your opinion or shut up? Do you have a say about what's happening in Israel, or how to deal with the crisis of younger American Jews in America that they want to take at least one step from Israel, disagree with its policy, and don't want to be identified with that state? What is your attitude? What would you do? So these are, I know, very tough questions, and I don't want to delude you. I don't have the answers. The only thing that I would like to say is my own opinion, how I look at it. And first of all, and the question that I asked you, that every one of you should decide for himself, is Israel important for you? So for me, it's, after my family, it's the most important thing in my life. I define myself, might be surprised, but I define myself, first of all, as a daughter to the Jewish people, and then an Israeli. I see the Judaism as, although I'm secular, as being a set of values to be a Jew. It's a moral values, in my opinion. It's a matter of culture. It's a joint history of the Jewish people. It's a joint destiny of the Jewish people all around the world. It is a language that we have Hebrew in Israel. And the state of Israel was founded by the Jewish people who came all over the world. I don't need to tell that to you. You know that. You could tell me. People that established the state of Israel came as my grandfather and mother from Russia, or came 100 years ago, or came from the United States, and all over the place. The vision that they have seen when they established the state of Israel was expressed in the Declaration of Independence. And there are two basic principles that are written there, in many words, but two main principles. One, that Israel would be the homeland of the Jewish people. Every Jew around the world can turn to be a citizen in the day that he would decide, a citizen of a state of Israel. This is his homeland, if he chooses to do that. The other principle, I'm not saying that this is the second one. The other principle on the same level is that that state would be a democratic state, which means that the principle of equality is the guiding principle of this state, it means that everyone that lives, this is the vision, that everyone who lives in Israel, Jew, Arab, Christian, whatever, would be equal with everyone else. This is the vision of the Declaration of Independence. Now, a state that declared itself as the homeland of the Jewish people, I think, open a window for every Jew in the world that could be relevant to its definition as the homeland of the Jewish people. I agree that the ones who are living in Israel, these are the people who should decide upon its policy. Therefore, there is election, and there is a government, and there is Knesset, and whatever. But when we're talking about the basic components of its identity, you have a say. This is my opinion. And it's very important for me to say that criticism against the government, it's legitimate. Can't you criticize Trump? It means that you don't love America? Can't I criticize Bibi Netanyahu? It means that I don't love Israel? It means that I love Israel. And because my love to Israel, and because my obligation to the state of Israel, and because I am a patriot of the state of Israel, if I think that the government's policy is wrong, is against Israel's interest, I oblige. This is my duty to open my mouth and express my opinion that I oppose this policy. Yes, I oppose. And I think that this is your obligation too when we're talking about the definition of the state of Israel. And now, in a minute, will enter to the place where I think that you should be involved. I just want a comment about the reform movement, because I just said something about that with allegations of the right. So I think that this opinion deserves every condemnation. Who would say who is a Jew? How come that an Orthodox Jew can exclude other Jews from the circles of Jews, and vice versa? I think that every Jew has his own way. And what is happening in Israel, I know how you look at it. And I feel sometimes, I apologize, I don't know where to put myself. When people are asking me in a synagogue when I speak with them here in America, how come that your government is looking at us as if we're not Jews? I apologize for that. I feel horrible about that. But my answer to you is that don't misunderstand that. This is a small internal politics of Haredim that are sitting in the government of Israel on behalf of the interest of the Jewish people and the interest of the state of Israel, that the role of the government is to be involved with unity of the people of the Jewish people. So don't take it, as much as you can, so seriously. I believe that majority of Israelis don't believe in it. Understand that. This is politics. I'm sorry for that. I apologize for that. About the connection to Israel, I would like to say that despite everything that I said until now, in my opinion, the connection to the state of Israel is something that you can't deny. I believe that majority of you feel that deep in your heart, that Israel is important for you. And even if you don't live there, and you don't have to live there, everyone chooses the place to live. But I believe that you think deep in your heart that the Jewish people has the right to have a nation state of his own. And this is his homeland. And his history gives a very strong explanation why the Jewish people should have a homeland. And today, Zionism is not just an idea that was 120 years ago. Zionism today has been implemented into a state. There are 8 million people that are living there. 6 million of them are Jews. They are there. They're implemented the idea of Zionism. And the question is, what would become of that? So the main problem, as I see that, with Israel of today, that if to call it the child by its name, is that Israeli democracy is in stake. I believe that you are starting to understand what I'm talking about because you have your own problem, which is called President Trump. But there's a huge difference between your situation here in the state and the place where Israel is. Because you have a constitution, you have a strong Supreme Court, you have a strong system that is quite difficult to erode its stability. You don't have an occupation, and you have a clear borders. All the things that I just mentioned, Israel hasn't. We have some, not very strong. We don't have a constitution. We don't have borders. We have an occupation. And we have a lot of troubles. So the question that you should ask yourself is, if Israel is going to lose its democracy, what does it mean about you? Do you have a say about that? Would you be involved with it? It makes you any difference? My answer to you is yes. Is positive? Yes. This is your business because of many, many reasons. As I said before, the definition of the State of Israel that relates to you also, as the homeland of the Jewish people, relates to its democracy. I believe myself that if Israel would lose its democracy, it would lose its legitimation as the homeland of the Jewish people. And from all the reasons in the world that supportive of democracy, I think you should raise your voice as Jews and say, yes, a democracy in Israel is according to the Declaration of Independence, and this is a basic component of this state and should remain like that. And this is from a moral point of view. But I could tell you something that you know better than me, that the wrongdoing of Israel, sometimes you are being held as responsible for that. And if not you, your children in universities. So even if you don't want to be connected, the connection will run after you. If you look, I just want to remind you something on the positive way. Ben-Gurion said when he was interviewed that 3 decisions of his were extremely important for him in the whole history of himself. He said the first one was that he decided to make an aliyah in 1906. The third one was the Declaration of Independence and the establishment of the State of Israel. But I want to be focused on the second one. And the second one, that in 1945, he asked 20 American Jews millionaires to come together to New York. And he established a fund, asked those people to put a lot of money there to buy an old weapon from the American army, leftovers from the World War II, and sent them to Israel as agriculture machines taken apart. This was the basic issue that the Israeli defense in 1948 was based on. This, the weapon that brought from the United States. Without that, all the lovely soldiers, brave people that were there weren't able to do what they did. 600,000 people against 7 countries. So this just gives you an illustration of the connection between the jury of America and Israel. I remind you that because I believe that your, generally your forefathers thought like this of the state of Israel and were ready to help. And they were ready to help the whole 70 years of the state of Israel, not only then. Now we see the danger in Israel, internal danger of its democracy. If you want, you could call it a culture war that has some ramification even on the existence of the state of Israel in the way that it was established. In Israel, there is a protest movement to this policy, and many good people that believing in democracy are ready and doing a lot with organizations, civil organizations that we support, New Israel Fund, in Israel. I call you to join them. I call you to connect to Israel, not to alienate Israel, to connect to it. I think that Israel needs you in a different way. This is a new era, in a different way, to strengthen its values. Yes. And those who believe in the Declaration of Independence of the State of Israel, join them. Do what your forefathers did. Root for Israel. And this time to maintain its character. Therefore, I call you to integrate your forces, and you have, with our forces, those forces in Israel that supporting and defending its democracy, to strengthen the state of Israel.
Thank you, Talia. You heard not only an intellectual approach, but also emotional. And if you don't read the news, you should understand why. Because in the last 2 weeks, the government, and particularly Netanyahu, started a real incitement against the NIF, accusing the NIF, for example, for the failure of his attempt to send African immigrants back to Africa. He said that the NIF contacted the Ugandan government and destroyed that option, which came from nowhere. So and now there are voices in Israel argue that NGOs like your organization, the NIF, should be banned, because what they do is simply support minorities, mainly the Arabs, the enemies of Israel. So it's not a theoretical conversation that we can discuss here at the university. It's an existential issue, and therefore you could feel the emotion. But we have been here for 45 minutes and didn't mention one name. Which name didn't we mention? Natalie Portman, of course. I know that everybody knows about the story of Natalie Portman. So do you know about it? All right. So I want to ask you a question about her. She was criticized by some Israeli ministers One of them, the former Minister of Finance, said that what she said was bordering anti-Semitism. Bordering anti-Semitism, not a criticism of Israel, not anti-Israeliness, anti-Semitism. And what did she say? She said that she did not want to participate in the Genesis Prize ceremony, $2 million, by the way. It's not small money. Because I chose not to attend the ceremony because I did not want to appear as endorsing Benjamin Netanyahu, who was to be given a speech at the ceremony. I'm not part of the BDS movement and do not endorse it. Like many Israelis and Jews around the world, I can be critical of the leadership in Israel without wanting to boycott the entire nation. I treasure my Israeli friends and family, Israeli food, books, art, cinema, and dance. Israel was created exactly 17 years ago as a haven for the refugees from the Holocaust, but the mistreatment of those suffering from today's atrocities is simply not in line with my Jewish values. Because I care about Israel, I must stand up against violence, corruption, inequality, and abuse of power. And if you didn't understand what she said, this is bordering anti-Semitism. Public declaration by a minister. I'm not mentioning another member of Knesset who said even worse things than that. She was born in Israel, Natalie Portman. She moved to the United States, became a famous film actor. She participated in the beautiful film based on Amos Oz's biography, and this is what happened to her. So I want to ask you one question about the issue of BDS. What is the NIF's policy regarding BDS? Do you support it, or you're against it, or what's your policy?
We oppose that. We oppose we oppose BDS, of course. Although the right-wing people there are trying to say that we don't. But about Natalie Portman, you could see it's an example, just an example of what's going on in Israel these days. You can't oppose the government's policy. The minute that you do that, they would say you are not a patriot of the state of Israel. This is what's going on, exactly. What she said, I think that I could sign on. And when I open my mouth in Israel, in television and media of Israel, a lot of times, I get the same criticism coming from the Prime Minister himself. And this is the fight, to silence every criticism against the government. Do you accept that? Good for you. We don't. We don't. This is this is democracy. This is what we mean by democracy. Democracy, you should express your mind, and you should try to persuade other people that you are right, if you believe so. This is what we do.
Yesterday in my class on Israeli politics, I discussed the very interesting phenomena of the last 2 years of the post-democracy or illiberal democracy trends in the world, particularly in Europe. And we showed the developments in Poland, Hungary. We didn't take examples from Turkey or Russia, which are less democratic, but societies and states that were democratic, like Poland and Hungary, and the United States, and we compare the processes and we analyze that. And one of the issues that I raised there was, I don't understand why there are already 24 books, only 12 I was able to read, not more than that, and hundreds of articles describing this new trend of anti-democratic, illiberal, whatever, and Israel is not mentioned there. And when you look at the details of the attitude towards the Supreme Court, the attitude towards the media, the attitude towards NGOs, things that happened in the last 5, 10 years in Israel are very similar to those that took place in Poland and Hungary, Slovakia, and other places. And yet Israel is not mentioned here. And I wonder why. So later on, if any of you can give me an answer, I owe it to my students because I didn't give them an answer yesterday. Why is Israel is not being put in this camp of the less democratic, illiberal democratic states? But tell us a little bit more about the Supreme Court and the position of the Supreme Court in Israel, because you know that particular field more than others.
Well, it's very difficult to explain in 2 words. Supreme Court in Israel is weaker than it should be because we don't have a constitution. So the government can change, the government by the Knesset can change laws as they like. And you don't hear me?
I hear you. But
Yeah, yeah. You don't hear me? Now you won't hear Yoram. So we are talking about Supreme Court and High Court of Justice in Israel. We don't have a constitution, we have basic laws. Basic laws can be changed by 61 mandates of the Knesset. Every coalition has 61 mandates. So the defense on the basic components of the regime, of democracy, you don't have. In 1992, the Knesset legislated the law about how to say the liberty and dignity of human beings, something like that. And this law, the High Court of Justice interpreted as if gives him the power to cancel Knesset laws. You know, as your Supreme Court can cancel laws of Congress and Senate. There is a huge debate since then, since 95 in Israel, that there is a tension between High Court and the Knesset. If the Knesset can cancel decisions of the High Court that canceled laws of the Knesset and could legislate it again, and then what happening? If it's on 61 mandates or more, nothing about that is written anywhere. And this, to make the whole story very short to you, I hope you understand what I'm saying, is that nowadays there is the right-wing people in Israel and the coalition, they are trying to legislate a law that would enable the Knesset to legislate new laws that High Court of Justice cancelled by 61 mandates. What means that the High Court of Justice wouldn't have any power over the Knesset, because everything that they would do, the Knesset could change. That law that they are trying to promote, maybe this law might bring to elections in Israel. I don't know. Some say that. But if this law would pass, this bill would pass, then the structure of democracy of Israel would be weakened from the inside, because the authorities of the government and Knesset would be much powerful than High Court. And the balance between the authority might be weakened. So
maybe one word of explanation to the students who don't know the history about that. We're talking about judicial review, the power of the Supreme Court to say to the government and the Knesset, the law is illegitimate because it's non-constitutional. For that, it's not enough to have a simple majority, because every Israeli government has simple majority. Out of the 120 members of Knesset, every government has to have at least 61 members of Knesset to support the government. So if you say just simple majority, we can reverse the position of the Supreme Court, it means that it can be done every day. If you want to change and to weaken the judicial review, you have to have a special majority of 90 members of Knesset, 95, 85, but not 61. And the bill that is now put before the Knesset is to be able to change the decision of the Knesset just with 61 seats, which means that there will be no judicial review in Israel. We don't have too much time, but I do want to let some people ask questions. So we'll take 2 questions, and then we'll have to call the panel. Please, introduce yourself.
I don't think does this work?
Yes, it does.
So Talia, you spoke about the fact that there's a conflict between progressives in the United States and the right wing in Israel, and you described the various policies of the right wing in Israel that have resulted in that conflict. But the progressives I talk to in the United States have a much deeper problem than what you've addressed. And that is they see a conflict between the 2 aspects of the Declaration of the Establishment of Israel, the principle of democracy on the one hand and the Jewish homeland on the other. They see democracy as demanding that Israel must declare itself a homeland both of the Jews and of the descendants of the Palestinians who lived there when the Jews conquered it in 48, and therefore Palestinians and Jews in the diaspora, for example, should have equal rights to go to immigrate to Israel. And people in Israel, Arab citizens of Israel who have relatives in the West Bank should be able to bring them or marry someone in the West Bank and bring them to Israel if a Jew can also do the same. So to them, and many of them are very strong supporters of Israel, to them there's a conflict that's much deeper than just the recent right-wing moves.
Okay, well, I didn't have the time here to express the whole picture. You're touching the conflict, as some says, between Israel being a Jewish state and a democratic state. I think that High Court of Justice in Israel declared that we agree that we're not a perfect democracy from the beginning of it, because we give the Jewish people the right, the option to turn to be a citizen of the state of Israel. Only Jews, not anybody else. And it's not equal. I agree with you. And it's a problem. Yes, we're not perfect. If this is the only thing that we were not perfect, we would survive with it. The problem is much bigger, of course, I know. But look, equality is something that you can't achieve, ever. Equality is a value. It's something that you want to become closer to. It's very difficult to reach, because those people who has no right always want equality. Those people who have the right don't want to give them. So it's sophisticated, it's difficult. But what the High Court of Justice of Israel said is that the minute that a person entered the state of Israel, then this state should be equal to all its citizens. Now, you involved people in the West Bank and Israel. Yes, you're entitled to do that. There's no border today. But this is what people like myself were saying. Do you want to maintain Israel as the homeland of the Jewish people and a democratic state? The only option that you have, the only one, is separation for Palestine and Israel. Unless, if you don't do that, if you continue with the current situation, then you are holding under control 3 million people in the West Bank without any border, in a different system. If you are a Jew, you are here. If you're a Palestinian, you are there. They don't have the rights to vote and to control their own life and so on. So this is not a democracy. So those things, achieving peace, borders, maintaining democracy, having social justice, they're all connected. This is one way of looking at the whole picture. You can't fix only one thing here or one thing there. As a matter of fact, I believe that if we would achieve that, the separation between Israelis and Palestinians, Palestinians should have their own state, Israel should be a separate state, in my opinion, with, yes, I know, this problematic democracy that gives the Jewish people the privilege to become citizens of the state. But look, this is our history. This is what happened. The Jewish people are all over the world. This is our situation. Can you change it? No. And I believe that this is the reason for the establishment of the State of Israel. It should remain the option of Jews to come to Israel and turn to be citizens. So I know this is not a perfect democracy, and as I said before, with that we could live.
Thank you.
Fix all the other.
Thank you. We'll take just one more. We'll have plenty of time for questions later on. Yes, please.
Is it okay if I don't use the mic? Can you hear me? No. Okay. So, very interesting talk. Thank you. My question is, you commented on the relationships between Israelis and US Jewry. My question is, do you think politics should be present in youth programs where organizations in America try to link teenagers with Israel? Yes, no, if so, how much, and all that.
Another sentence of explanation of the question, please.
I'm sorry.
What do you mean by organizations?
So, for example, BBYO and other youth organizations tried to link youth, Jewish youth with Israel, like create a bridge between the future members of US Jewry or current teen members, future adults in the US Jewry community with Israel. So should political issues be present in youth programs that try to bring US Jewry linked up with Israel? Yes or no?
Look, politics is all over the place, right? Everything is political, if you want. Whatever I would say, of course, people would say, this is political. This is her own views. Yes, okay. So forget this aspect of your question. Those people young people in universities in the States and other places, look, we have a need and they have a need. We have a need to connect them to Israel and they have a need for that. Because it doesn't help if they wouldn't do that. Others, non-Jews, would connect them to Israel. So the question is what to do. How to connect them? To connect them to what? To connect them to a place that its vision is a continuation of the occupation and settlement and whatever, control and other people's lives and so on. It can't help. They can't get out of it. This is something that they will never have an answer to. So I think that the connection that could help them, that could be a bridge between progressive young Jews of America and Israel, should be through an organization like us. Well, we are the main organization in Israel because we support all the others. But we're an organization that a progressive Jew can identify himself with. All the values that you believe in democracy, in the state of Israel, its success. We want social justice. We want it to remain a democracy. This is what we want. So I believe that we are a bridge to those young Jews to say there are good people in Israel and a good movement that you could identify yourself with. We're trying to help Israel to turn to be this and that, and not what we see through the television about its government.
Thank you, Talia.